In this section, I'd like to talk a little bit about the toolbar here, which is this long, slender little window here on the left side. Now, the toolbar is, of course, where you find all your tools for manipulating everything from cameras, lighting, your objects to brushes, everything. So pretty much all the tools you would use within and selecting your tools is done with the toolbar. Now, depending on which section of Amorphium you're in, the toolbar will change to have the tools for that section. So I'm right now in the composer view, which is where you compose your scene with your cameras, lighting, and objects, and actually do your animations. So because of that, this is the toolbar has your tools for modifying your camera, your objects, and lights, creating various objects to start out with, things like your primitive objects, that sort of thing, and rendering. So it's where you would find your tools for doing that sort of thing. So for example, with the orbit tool, which is this little hamburger looking icon, which actually is supposed to be a Saturn with a ring around it representing orbit for the camera. So now I can orbit the camera using the toolbar by clicking on that and rotating, and by clicking and rotating my camera there. Now, as I change to different sections in Amorphium, you'll notice that the toolbar changes to have the tools that would be used for that section. So one thing you'll notice that the navigational type of tools within the modeling sections are the same standard tools. You have move, you have zoom, rotate, bank, and changing your lighting position. So for example, with move, I can move the object around. Zoom zooms the object, and this is just affecting my view, the way I'm looking at my object, not the actual object itself. Rotate, which you can't really see with a sphere, and then you can place your lights. Now let me just go ahead and create a cube here so it's a little easier to see what I'm doing with that. So now if I come back in here, change to my cube, so rotate and bank. So these are standard tools that you'll see in the toolbar, like throughout the, here they are here. You'll see it in all the modeling sections. So there are shortcut commands for doing this, because a lot of times when you're working on an object, you'd want to be able to modify it, then rotate it, and you don't want to have to click your tool, do it, then click and rotate. So one of the things that is kind of nice about these particular tools in your toolbar is that they have shortcuts. So for example, holding down the spacebar will let me move the object, like just holding on spacebar and moving, and see, so I can have a different tool picked, like a tool for sculpture, and then hold down spacebar and it will move my object. And then if I hold down Command key on the Mac or Control key on the PC, it goes to rotate mode. And then if I hold down Command key on the Mac and Control key on the PC and the spacebar together, then it'll zoom. So those are some shortcuts for those three tools there that allow you to be able to do that in the midst of your modeling, so you don't have to actually keep clicking here, then do your thing, then click over here. So nice shortcut command for that to help speed up your workflow. So basically with the toolbar, as I move through, you'll see the various tools that will pop into this based on the section you're in. So for example, the mask tool will have different brush type tools for you to use within the masks section. And some of the tools, like in masks, you'll have split buttons, which I believe is only in the mask section that you actually have any split tools, where you can actually choose one or the other, where this would draw, like if I were to fill, you know, like this is a fill, so if I want to fill it with a mask or fill it with no mask, so you can see that I'm actually having two different tools there. So another thing too is that you have these tooltips, where if you just roll over and sit the mouse on the button on the toolbar for a extended time, that it'll tell you what the tool is. Now, one other thing about the toolbar that in Composer, being that Composer has a lot of tools and that they wouldn't all necessarily fit on this little bar, wherever you see these three dots in Composer, that's where telling you that there are multiple tools behind that particular tool button. So you can see that for the camera options, I've got all these different tools to use. Well, now I can just basically click and choose a different tool, and I can use that tool. Well, the nice thing is that, okay, this might be kind of tough to keep coming in here and having to choose your tool. Well, the nice thing is that you can actually tear this off and drop it down in your interface. So now if I'm going to be doing a lot of camera movement for setting up my scene, this makes it a little bit easier for me to be able to quickly access those buttons. So I can actually do that and, you know, have a little bit more access to those. And it makes it a little bit quicker workflow. And you can close that by clicking the little box, or if you've already got it out and you drag it out again, it gets rid of the previous and replaces it with the new one. So that is basically the way the tear-off palettes work with the toolbar. Now, one last thing I'd like to mention before I finish this section is that you'll notice that there's a red dot on some of these. For example, with the scale, here there's a red dot. What that red dot represents is that there are options for this tool. So if you hold down the control key on the Mac and click on it, or right click on the PC, it will bring up the options for that particular tool. So for example, with scale, right now it's set to all axes, so it scales everything evenly. Well, if I set it to Y and click OK, you can see I've now modified that tool's options to do a scale only on the Y. So if you ever want to get options for any of the tools that have the red dot, that means you just right click on the PC or control click on the Mac. And that's the way the functionality is for the toolbar.